Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. And there you have it. After 2 weeks of struggling to break above the $36,000 level, Bitcoin finally breaks out to the upside. And this level was not only very important because it was our 382 Fibonacci retracement from the swing high to the swing low, it was also the major low that we had in the beginning of 2022 that sent us into our first bear market rally before the big rejection at 48,000 that sent us into huge capitulation and significantly lower. And the same way we were able to flip bullish when 32K was reclaimed because it was the major swing low region for 2021. Now that we have reclaimed 36,000, any short-term bearish arguments hold no grounds in my opinion because we have a very obvious invalidation level at 36,000. If this is truly bearish, it'll be confirmed once 36,000 is lost. But as long as we're above 36,000, anybody looking at this with an unbiased view cannot be bearish in the short term in my opinion if they truly are being unbiased, because as long as that level is held, we are back in our old range, and the unbiased target would be the mid-range coming in at about 42,000. And there's infinite narratives for both sides. The bears are going to talk about liquidity, recession, FTX selling to cover their creditors, and the bulls are going to talk about ETF and this following all the previous cycles and on-chain and long-term holders looking very good. And it's really hard to separate the narratives because there's good arguments on both sides. But if we cut out the noise and look at what's in front of us, we have a very obvious invalidation to the downside and a very obvious target if we're just willing to look at this from an unbiased perspective. When you reclaim a previous range, your next target is the mid-range, and your invalidation is us falling back below the range, which would tell us that in fact the sellers are more powerful than the buyers here, and Bitcoin is not ready for the high 30Ks quite yet. But as long as that doesn't happen, target is 42,000 in my opinion. And I think there's plenty of narrative and momentum for us to do so. For one, we have equities doing incredibly well, and if we get anything that resembles a Santa rally like we got in 2022, funny enough, we bottomed at the end of October and took off for November and December into the end of the year, and we're seeing the beginning signs of something very, very similar. We get that Santa rally, maybe we even go and put in a new yearly high before the recession finally takes us significantly lower. But we know that November and December are normally very good for equities, especially thanks to the holiday season and money managers trying to make profits to lock in for their for people that put money into their funds going into year end. We also have the dollar chopping around and not really doing much. Obviously, a huge breakout for the dollar would be bad for risk assets. A huge breakdown would be good, but it chopping around and not really doing much gives risk assets the breathing room they need to have some short-term upside going into year end, which is an incredible backdrop for Bitcoin now that it has broken above 36,000. And I haven't really seen much mainstream media attention yet. I think if we really start to see some more shocking numbers that we haven't seen in almost 2 years, like a 4 being on the front of Bitcoin's price, combined with the ETF narrative, with the deadline being very close, January 10th, 2024, then we could see some mainstream attention. Then we can see some more passive investors that are only here for the bull markets and disappear for the bear markets. Maybe they start to FOMO in, and then we can talk about a major top at 42,000 or at 48,000, our previous range high. But we're not going to worry about 48,000. Let's worry about 42,000 for now. But I think there's a very good chance this could get hit by year end, especially if the ETF steam starts to build up even more. And of course, close below 36,000 and all that can go out the window, because this will then look very bad because we got into a previous range and could not maintain it. And probably the best argument for more upside is, for the first time in a year and a half, we're seeing inflows into the crypto market now that the total market cap has crossed that resistance of 1.25 trillion that we've been below ever since May 2022. So almost a year and a half we spent below that level, and we finally had not only a weekly close above it last week, we're seeing continuation this week, which tells us that there are inflows coming into the space, and this isn't just a rotation between assets and musical chairs with money moving around trying to catch the latest pump. we're seeing inflows into the entire space. Now, of course, we have Ethereum lagging quite a bit. So total 2, which excludes BTC but includes Ethereum, is still putting in lower highs as of right now, but this is getting very close to its swing high in April. And if Ethereum decides to pick up some steam, we could have a breakout on this as well. Ethereum is sitting below the major resistance level of 1920 that it's been below for almost the entirety of not only the second half of 2022, but also 2023, aside from this little deviation we had in April. Ethereum breaking out here will send total 2 and total market cap significantly higher. But as of right now, it's still lagging Bitcoin, thanks to Bitcoin's strength coming from the spot ETF. And we could probably see a strong rotation into Ethereum once that ETF gets approved, because money will want to front run the Ethereum ETF that we will inevitably get down the line. But as of right now, Ethereum's still lagging, and that is being reflected in total 2. But of course, we know that the big gains don't come from Bitcoin or Ethereum, they come from the altcoins. And this total 3 chart is one of the most exciting charts in the entire space, in my opinion. This is the entire market cap minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. And as you can see, this $400 billion level has been resistance ever since pre-FTX in October of 2022. The last time we were above it very briefly was August of 2022. And this $400 billion level was resistance in November, in April, and now once again. But if this breaks out to the upside, that's where the real opportunity is. And maybe we have one major squeeze before the recession finally kicks in. And then we see massive pain going into the recession after everybody FOMOs into altcoins when Total 3 finally breaks out. And those amazing opportunities for crazy multiples coming from the altcoins that you just don't get in Ethereum or Bitcoin finally come into play when Total 3 gets a weekly close above 400 billion. I would expect a lot of money to come flying into altcoins, and maybe even some rotating out of Bitcoin and Ethereum once we get that Total 3 breakout. And we're seeing the early signs of that Total 3 breakout from some of the favorites like Chainlink and Solana, which have had these incredible moves, both almost 3 to 4x off of their bottoms. Obviously, these are some of the most loved projects and arguably the ones that have the best fundamentals in terms of the technology and what they're actually doing. And of course, some will argue everybody has their favorite project and they'll think they know about something that's better than these, or, it's everyone has their opinions on their favorite altcoins, but you can't argue that a move like this with this much strength and altcoins trending this hard could be a leading sign of what's to come for Total 3. And if we do see continued strength from some of these altcoins, I think we would get the Total 3 breakout and things could get very crazy. Maybe not in these because they've already moved so much and it might take some time for them to cool off before continuing higher. But these might be an early sign of what's to come for Total 3, especially because these are some of the larger market caps. Maybe not the largest. There's, of course, XRP and BNB and other larger projects, but this could be an early sign of what's to come if Bitcoin maintains its strength and if Total 3 finally gets its breakout. So, of course, it's nice to finally be able to talk about altcoins, the crypto market as a whole, because we're finally seeing some excitement and maybe macro can go into the backdrop, at least for the short term. We know macro is what affects the medium and long term, and all my recession and liquidity concerns are still there. But as we've already seen in the past 3 weeks, going from almost 27,000 to 37,000, a $10,000 move in Bitcoin alone, and even crazier moves in altcoins, there's still plenty of short-term opportunity on the table, especially as all the sidelined people start to FOMO in thanks to this potential year-end rally and the seasonality that we normally see in markets in November and December. There's a major opportunity for short-term upside here, but of course, we're still going to keep a very close eye on the macro data. A bad CPI print or a bad unemployment print would probably cause some panic, but we have very obvious invalidation levels on the chart. Below 36,000, we can get bearish short term and start to really get concerned and pay attention. And of course, below 32,000, which would undo this entire breakout and turn this entire thing into a deviation, then we can talk about medium-term bearishness. And I think a recession or some extreme pain in markets would be what would be required to send us below 32,000, especially before the ETF approval. I just really don't see sellers stepping in. Sellers that held through 3AC, held through the Luna collapse, held through the FTX collapse. Hodlers held through all this pain and all this chop and all this downside after what was almost a painful bull market when we went from 64,000 down to 30, back to a very slight all-time high and then a huge sell-off. After holding through all of that pain, I don't expect people to step in and sell at 37,000 before an ETF launch, unless we really see recession pain start to kick in to the more traditional markets and overall fear starts to build up, or once the ETF launch is actually behind us and the argument for the sell the news event starts to come into play. But anyway, I think it's going to be an exciting 2 months regardless. I think people underestimate how much can happen between now and the end of the year. 2 months does not feel like a long time, but Bitcoin has already moved over 30% in 1 month, and it's only another maybe 25. Oh, well, actually, it's only another 12% between where we are now and the mid-range, and it's only another 30% until we get to the 618 Fibonacci retracement and the range high for 2022. And 50K would be my absolute best case scenario. If everything went perfectly before the halving, 50K would be my absolute best case scenario, but we'll leave that until we see what happens in the low 40,000s first. No reason to jump to conclusions. But anyway, let me know what you expect. Are you excited? Obviously, I'm sure a lot of us have cash on the sidelines because we do want to be prepared for the recession. So maybe we're not as all in as we'd like to be, especially when prices are moving up this aggressively. But as long as we're patient, as long as we have some upside exposure, but also some downside protection in cash so we can take advantage of dips, I think it is a mistake to underestimate what can happen in the short term here as we have this Goldilocks period of the recession not getting bad yet and a Santa rally as everybody who is sidelined starts to FOMO in because they don't want to miss out on these moves. But anyway, let me know what you expect. I would love to know what you expect as the 2023 high for Bitcoin. Do you think 40K is possible? Do you even think 50K is possible? I think it's a possibility, but it's not my base case. I think for now, 42,000 by the ETF deadline is possible. But of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens. And I think now that there's some excitement back in the market, it's time to go back to daily uploads because stuff is finally going on and there's finally some price action instead of months and months and months of sideways. But anyway, let me know what you expect going forward. Thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.